What does it take to create a federation? I've emphasized before the technology and the policy. That's the policy is going to be the most work. The technology has now gotten to where I think Paul can probably set up a federation from a technical standpoint, blindfolded, literally. What do you need? Same thing you need to have any successful project. You need vision, you need policy, a governance structure, a plan, and some resources. For a vision statement, we have used and whittled this down to this is what's become the vision statement we've used for a couple of federations. All students, faculty, and staff in the fill-in-the-blank federation and its affiliates are able to access both local and remote resources using their local credentials and attributes through a seamless technology infrastructure. This says that you can get to a remote telescope if that's your field of interest and you're qualified to do so, and control it remotely. And that's the power of this kind of technology. What are the business drivers? In our cases, the universities are spread all over the state of Texas. We want to enable collaboration, and collaboration, whether that's in research or in the classroom. We believe this technology is simply fundamental to doing so. We believe we can also have secure applications and simplify security by having a common trust fabric. We do this through the secure exchange of the authentication and authorization attributes. And of course, as we've said before, it's done on a common basis. You need a plan. We have one. That's the only thing that's not on that page. What you see here is the plan we came up with, that we wanted to do it on a single sheet. And it was technology, governance, and policy are the three things you need to have in place. The light green things are the things we've done. The red things are, red, green, and yellow from audits. So, and then gray things are things that we think we need to do but haven't entirely prioritized. In terms of governance, the way this is structured, a federation will have an executive committee. And so let me start down there in your lower right-hand corner. And this executive committee will have membership probably from the institutions involved or the organizations involved and from the sponsoring organization's board. So in InCommon's case, that's the way it's already laid out. And there is an InCommon board, but InCommon is represented on the executive committee. Within the UT Federation, the sponsoring organization is the Council of CIOs. They are also represented on the Federation Executive Committee. The sponsoring organization, is responsible for the vision. They also provide the IT management principles and policies under which the institutions or federations that you want to interact with are going to have to work under. And so the policy issues are normally in the hands of the executive committee. That's where the policy stops. And they provide it to the institutions, and the institutions provide feedback about whether or not they can live with it. In terms of those policy documents that I showed you earlier, the check marks here under InCommon as a model, UT used The check marks show what we have used out of the in common docs. The first three, the charter and the operating practices, I'm sorry, the first two, are essentially the same as in commons, only changed for the way the state of Texas and the University of Texas does business. Membership operating practices is really quite different from in commons. In commons simply has a web page originally where you can just list how you do business, and if someone wants to do business with you, they can read those and decide if that's good enough. That we couldn't do business that way with the UT institutions. Even under a single set of regents, we still had to say that you will conform to certain things about vetting and others. So if you see down there the second bullet, we used the University of California. They had already broken this ground for us in their federation, which is also based on in common but done slightly differently. What they did was they created a set of requirements that their member institutions are going to have to do. We modified those for our purposes. The operating practices defines the standards, policies, and procedures that all your members must adhere to. We have not had any trouble with commercial companies adhering to whatever the rules are. Membership agreement, again, this is different from in common, and this slide is wrong. I have since corrected it. It says interinstitution. Just strike the word learn membership and change document to documents. And then there's a federation attribute table, things that we might want to have, and then we, like others, charge for our membership. What's going to hit you if you decide to go out there and do this? It's very interesting, but this is one of those things where the technical people can put the federation up pretty easily. Once you figure out how you're going to populate the provision, if you will, the identity provider, so that you can get the information out of it that you need in order to tell the service providers. But that's easy to do. Getting agreement on the policy and dealing with lawyers and dealing with administrations of institutions. And you can say, well, why did you want to do that at all? Why don't you just bring it up, run it, and let it work? It's not the way I think makes sense to do business. If you're going to have two institutions interface and try to do something together, it makes sense that all of the appropriate people in the institution know about it and have agreed to it. And we do that by getting the signature of the chief business officers. And that way it's sufficiently been raised sufficiently high in the institution that if anybody has any serious misgivings, we address it before we get involved rather than after we have gone down the road for a while. Other things that might come up to bite you, governance. The second bullet there, conventions may be seen as dictates. What that's trying to say is that you have to have rules, and once you begin to have rules, then you will have resentment by some of the participants saying, you can't tell us how to do that. And your answer is, yeah, we can't, unless, of course, you want to participate, because you don't get to participate unless you adhere to the rules. And then, of course, what's important to one place is not what's important to another. So you have to be able to work within the varying priorities of the institutions. Finally, managing trust relationships is complex, even when dealing within the University of Texas system. As you get people or institutions that are outside of the single entity of the University of Texas, it just gets more complicated. I would say that was more of an issue 3 or 4 years ago than it is today. We seem to be running into more companies that have already heard of federations and aren't as surprised by the requirement in the bids that we put out as they once were. And what does the future look like? Well, we already had, you look at the green there, that's in common and Elsevier. And on that one slide, you saw that the University of Texas was there and the UT Federation, which I just called UT Fed. If you look at UT San Antonio as providing both identity providers and service providers, they can provide an identity provider so their students and faculties through the UT Fed, through in common, can get to Elsevier. We can also do the same thing, although we do not as yet, for Rice University as an identity and service provider if it wanted to get to Elsevier, or to get to services that UT provides, such as the supercomputer. The Texas RON, that's the regional optical network in the state of Texas. I think that regional optical networks are perfectly reasonable ways to set up a federation, mostly because they meet a need in a geographical area or a organizational boundary such as a state. The state of Texas has certain rules about the way public institutions will do business. We can also include some private institutions. So it makes sense for us in Texas to try to put together a federation, and we have done that. It's called Learn, and it works for higher ed in the state of Texas, and it's encompassing, it includes all of it. You'll notice there that I say the technology exists, and that's what I mean by this works today. The policy's not all there. We're still working on it.